Alright, so I've had two Tesla Model Ys at this point, and I've learned a lot in that process. The first car, of course, we got in March of 2020, which was one of the first cars that came off the line. Our options at that time were pretty limited, so you only had a few options to choose from at that time. And of course, since then, many things have changed. And it brings me to this point where I'm at now, which is there's a lot I've learned in ordering both of these cars. And now there's some things that I would and would not do different. However, I wanted to share with you the 10 things that you don't want to do when ordering your Model Y or Model 3. First and foremost is get the color that you actually want. Tesla charges between $1,000 and $2,000 for their color options depending on which one you select. Of course, the white one is included with the base price of the car. Now, the white color originally had a lot of mismatch issues. It wasn't just the rear bumper that you've probably heard most about, but also sometimes the doors didn't match. So there were some color issues at the very beginning that has since been resolved. Now, it's not perfect and it's hard to get this particular white to be perfect, but it is a lot better than it used to be at the beginning of production of the Model Y. So get that color that you want, and the reason is every time you see the color you wish you would have gotten, you're going to wish that you had it. So spend the extra $1,000 or $2,000 if you want red and get that color that you want. While we're talking about color, we have to talk about the interior. Now, I have to say, the white interior, in my opinion, is absolutely gorgeous, and I know there's a bunch of you who share that opinion. However, there are some of you who do not like the white. But if you do like the white but you're afraid of getting white, go for it. And here's why. When we took delivery of our new Model Y, the first thing I did was put the ceramic coat product on the interior, and it has added an extra layer of protection for those white seats. In addition, when we took delivery of the car, there was some dirt on these white seats that I had to clean up, and it all came up with baby wipes. And so far since owning, after putting that ceramic coat on, there's not been a stain that I haven't been able to remove with just baby wipes. Now, we have two little boys, so we were very worried the first time we ordered the car about getting the white interior, even though we wanted it. And it's for the same reason a lot of you would think. We're worried about ruining that white interior. But that just has not been the experience that we've had. Keeping the white interior clean has been very easy, and I'm continuing to explore products to maintain it over time. But so far, no issues at all with that beautiful white interior. I highly recommend you go ahead, pull the trigger, spend the extra $1,000 and get that gorgeous white interior. Now onto wheels, and now this one is more than just preference. You gotta hear me out on this. I highly recommend that you order the car with the standard Gemini wheels. Here's why. Instead of spending $2,000 on getting the induction wheels, you can forego that $2,000 and either buy an aftermarket set and have a second set, or pay somebody for their takeoff induction wheels. Now, I've seen these takeoff induction wheels between $2,000 with no tires on them and $2,500 with tires on them. Now, they can vary up and down from there, but for about $2,500, you can have the induction wheels if that's what you really want, which they look great, or for $2,500 roughly, you can get an aftermarket set of wheels and tires. Now you've got two sets of wheels for $500 more than just having the induction wheels. The reason why this is helpful is if you live in a cold climate, you now have a winter set. If you do road trips, you now have a road trip set. So you can have your nice wheels on for day-to-day stuff or during the summertime, and then in the winter or during road trips, put on the Gemini wheels. Those two sets of wheels are going to pay themselves off, and having two sets of tires that'll wear a little bit different, and it should be a little bit more efficient and more comfortable on the highway as well. Now, when we ordered our second Model Y, I did order it with the Gemini wheels, and I swapped over my induction wheels before selling the previous car. Now, my idea was to buy a set of takeoff wheels, but instead I just swapped them over. So I will be getting a second set at some point to have for the car. So for those of you that are considering the 7-passenger configuration, I want to talk directly to you, those of you who are on the fence especially. To get the 7-seat configuration, you are not giving up a lot of space to have the flexibility of those seats. In fact, the only thing that you're giving up is a very shallow sub-trunk that's right where those seats go. It's a very small space, only limited things are ever going to fit in there. You can fit the charging cable in there, but nothing bigger than that. So it's really not a lot of useful storage, and we barely ever used it. As a matter of fact, I threw some things in there that I never touched in the year that I owned that car. Now, the regular sub-trunk is still the same size, so you still have the same amount of storage outside of that front little compartment. Now here's where things get interesting. The 7-seat configuration does change things up in more than just that third row. The second row now moves forward and back. When you're not using that third row, you can actually move the second seats forward a bit and gain additional cargo space over what you would have in the fixed seats of the 5-passenger and still be able to sit people in those seats. So technically, although you lose that small, shallow subtrunk, you gain quite a bit of space by being able to move those front seats forward. There's actually more space in the 7-seat than there is in the 5-seat, I would argue, because of that flexibility. Now, regardless of what sunshine videos you've seen in the past, I've shared a more realistic picture of the third row. This third row is not for adults. You can technically squeeze yourself in there. However, at my height, at 5'6", I'm not very tall. My head rests right up against the trim there. Any kind of bumpy ride or, God forbid, an accident, your head is in a very bad place. This is not for adults. What this is for children, preferably children in booster seats or no car seats at all. Those would be the best fit for this third row. Now, we have some pretty bulky car seats, and we bought some new car seats for this car to accommodate having such limited space. So even then, it's still pretty tight getting those full-size car seats in there. So it's not a great space for many uses other than an emergency, or if you needed to squeeze one adult back there when they could just lean over a bit. It's not very easy to get in and out of for an adult, but it does have its uses, and it's nice to have by not sacrificing a whole lot to have it. Another thing that's quickly becoming a mistake is ordering full self-driving right off the bat. Now this is going to be a little bit controversial, but hear me out. Now that full self-driving subscription is available, for $200 a month you can try it. So for 200 bucks, activate it, and for 1 month you can try full self-driving to see if you actually would use it on a day-to-day basis. What I think you're going to find is Autopilot's actually going to work out well for most of you. Full self-driving at $10,000 is a ton of money, and it's still technically not fully capable yet. Now that is about to change. In about 2 weeks, the beta that's been limited to just select people is going to be released to the public. And that's great news, and it's going to be exciting to try out, but you really need to think about, before you spend $10,000, am I going to use this enough to justify $10,000? So think really hard about that. I recommend foregoing full self-driving at time of order unless you're really worried about prices of full self-driving continue to increase, which they very well could, and you don't anticipate taking delivery before those increases. So keep that in mind. I recommend shelling out 200 bucks at time of delivery, try it out, and decide if $10,000 could be spent better elsewhere. And while we're on the topic of full self-driving, don't miss out on enhanced autopilot should it come back. Now that full self-driving is getting ready to be fully available to the public, I think they're going to have pretty much figured out what the demand is for the system. At that time, eventually, I believe they could bring back enhanced autopilot. In some markets across the globe, enhanced autopilot is available right now. Late in 2020, they did release enhanced autopilot as an option for 2 weeks only, and it was $4,000. Enhanced autopilot is everything that full self-driving is, except for full self-driving on city streets and stoplight and stop sign control. That's it. Everything else, like lane change, navigate on autopilot, summon, all those other features that are actually useful are included in enhanced autopilot. So if it does come back out, don't miss your opportunity to get that instead of full self-driving. Of course, some of you are still going to want full self-driving, and more power to you. Let's talk about some of the things that are holding some of you back. And this is my number 7 don't do. Do not submit your order if you fall into one of these categories. First and foremost, EV tax credits. We have been talking about EV tax credits since the beginning of the year, and although some progress has been made, there's still no sign of hope that this is coming to a close anytime soon. There's too much separation in Congress, and most recently there was talk about putting a cap of $40,000 on the cost of an EV for it to qualify for tax credit. So as you may have seen in our previous video giving the recap in June, it's basically $10,000 for a Tesla, should it fall into the qualification parameters and this thing does pass. Again, there's no sign of when this is actually going to happen, if it's actually going to happen. But if you are insistent on waiting for that EV tax credit, do not buy now. If you're waiting for the 4680 cells, don't buy now. It turns out that with all the delays that are occurring within the supply chain, there is talk about the 4680 cells not coming to the Model Y out of Giga Austin right away. Of course, this is bad news, and this would delay the timing that we'd start to see these new cells in Model Ys. Elon Musk recently discussed in an earnings call they do have a backup plan for 2170 cells to fit into the Model Y made out of Giga Austin. So that cast front and rear end will be able to mount to a 2170 battery pack. If you are insistent on waiting on the benefits of the 4680 cell, now is not the time to buy. And then finally, there's one other rumor related to do not buy right now, and that is talks about the standard range Model Y coming back. We just learned a week ago that the standard range Model Y may be coming back to America here following the release in the Asian market. What we know right now is that the standard range Model Y would have batteries supplied from China with LFP packs. These LFP packs are going to likely reduce the range from the 244 that we saw previously, or it's going to have a much larger battery pack to bring it up to 244 miles. Now, if it does follow the same pricing trends of the long-range all-wheel drive over this year, it's very likely that we're going to see the price between $45,000 and $46,000. So that's a $7,000 difference between the long range and the standard range for the Model Y. This is going to be super popular. Of course, when the standard range did release, it was incredibly popular and hard to get your hands on. Now, prices have gone up since those days, and at $45,000 to $46,000, it's starting to be quite a bit of money for a standard range Model Y. Nonetheless, the standard range Model Y is going to have a ton of capability, and it's going to be a great option for a lot of you to consider. At $5,000 or $6,000 more than the Model 3 standard range, I think it's definitely worth considering taking over a Model 3 standard range. And with that in mind, next think about getting as much range as you can afford. Of course, if you're considering a Model Y, right now your only option is long range. However, that could be changing soon with the return of the standard range Model Y. But if you're buying a Model 3, if you can afford the difference between the long range and the standard range, get the long range. You are not likely to ever be in a situation where you're going to say to yourself, I wish I had less range. On the flip side, you may find yourself in a position where you say, I wish I had more range. Now, this is going to be most obvious when you're on road trips. And the reason is supercharging is much faster with the long range battery pack than the standard range. So you're gonna have to stop more, and it's not gonna charge as fast as it does in the long range. Charging speeds are capped for the standard range, and as the long range gets full access to full charging speeds, we are anticipating to see the V3 supercharging network to increase charging speeds with the existing infrastructure in place, which is fantastic. That's not likely going to help any standard range models, but the long range models could start to tap into just a little bit more speed in charging. Number 9 on the list is don't get the wall charger. Now, you can get the wall charger if you like, but here's my recommendation. For our house, it was simple enough to add a NEMA 1450 outlet. So I added a 50 amp line and just had a standard 1450 outlet. So we added a 50 amp line to our box and added an outlet just next to the box. Then all you need to do is buy the $45 adapter from Tesla and use the mobile charger that comes with the car. This is gonna peak at 32 amps, which as long as your voltage is good, you should get about 29 or 30 miles of charge per hour. Now the wall charger can be set up at a much higher rate and can charge up to about 44 to 45 miles of charge per hour. So that is quite a bit more, but it's very unlikely you're gonna need that much more. The only caveat to that, in my opinion, is if you have 2 Teslas. Having the ability to charge faster is probably gonna be convenient with an actual wall charger. So I would forego the $500 plus installation and just spend a couple $100, depending on location, with your local electrician to add an outlet. And then finally, the number 10 item is if you are wanting to protect the front of the car, do it right away. It's not so much a paint quality issue from Tesla that some people talk about. It's more the fact that it's literally a flat painted surface that's plowing through the wind, and everything on the road that's getting kicked up is making contact with that front bumper. That's why PPF is so popular with Teslas, and that's why I recommend getting it. We've done it on both of our cars now, and once we take delivery of our Model 3, I'll be doing it on that as well. Now, it is very expensive to have this done professionally, and there are some DIY kits out there. There is one that I'm a big fan of at this point. I've done both the 3M and the Expel kits, and I personally prefer the Expel kit because it requires less stretching. This Expel kit I've teamed up with Drive Protected Shop, and you have access to 20% off on any of these kits that you want. So whether you want to just do the front end, just do the bumper, do a partial front end, or the entire car, you do have access to a discount. Now, all these prices are in Canadian dollars, so US dollars right now is about 80% the cost. So take 20% off and then take 20% off again, and that's how much it'll be. To do a partial front is about 400 US dollars. To do a full frontal is about $600, and then you can go from there and do the rest of the car, which we are doing piece by piece. And while you're at it, of course, don't forget to also protect the inside by getting your Max Spider floor mats right away before you take delivery. Keep that inside nice and pristine, as it's such a beautiful car. There's a link in the description to get you $10 off of that set as well. So let me know in the comments, are you about to take delivery? Are you going to change your configuration? Have you held back on some of the options you wish you would have done? Let me know in the comments. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, of course, give it the thumbs up. If you haven't already, of course, subscribe to the channel as we continue to post content regularly. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Bearded Tesla. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.